What you waiting for?
It just wasn't. It was, yeah, it wasn't coming up. So, but we are. It looks like we're
Oh,
live now, anyways, or it's
15
working.
seconds, 17 now, 18.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks for joining us, Popois and Sherry, and we might have Henry come in too. This is kind of a special episode, almost like a little panel about Indigenous rights and UNDRIP and alliances and all kinds of good stuff. Maybe we can just start with a quick introduction for both of you, Sherry and Popois, and then we'll jump into it.
Go ahead, ladies first.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sherry. I'm living on the Sunshine Coast. I'm a settler on the lands of the Seychelles Nation. And I also am been following this UNDRIP situation, and I thought it would be great to talk about this and find out what's going on from the perspective of the hereditaries, as well as if there's any band council people that have views. It would be, I'm just trying to bridge the gap and find answers that help when people bridge the gap of what's created in the world is a lot of divisiveness and communication that puts people into fear rather than inspiring something wonderful, which I'm getting a lot of good feelings by aligning with Popois, the headsman of the Peoples of the Salmon group, and what the 7 laws of working in a natural world with the original peoples would feel like, and how that could create a better world.
Awesome. Thanks, Sherry. I'm glad you guys are here because we wanted to do an UNDRIP sort of to touch on UNDRIP. So this is good.
Popois, I'm from my mother's Sibakwa, her mother's Sasalitsa, her mother's Malian. Her mother died at birth, but she was raised by her father, Francis Billy, and Lucy from the Skomish. And their Malian's mother was Hasinawit, and her sister was Kakamai, who was in the Vancouver area, was Portuguese, one of Portuguese Joe Silvy's wives. There's a bronze statue of the 2 women, one woman, the Kakamai, and another wife of Joe Silvy in Stanley Park. So that's pretty well. I've been asked this before. So if they say, well, where do you get your rights? I could go further and state that I grew up on the coast fishing from 14 on. My mother didn't like us, I believe, and you can't substantiate this. However, she wouldn't teach us a language, even though she ended up contributing to a 10,000 word dictionary. So when she moved out of the city, she came back to the village. She got was given a house. She exchanged it with her sister and lived next to her mother in a duplex, and which she passed that on to me. So it was because we had a connection of helping her while I was fishing. I don't know why I did it, but I used to send money. Like $100 was like probably $1,000 bill in today's currency. But from 14 on to time fishing in the summers, that's what I shared with her. And I don't think she ever forgot that because, she didn't say, well, here's, share the house between, 6 other siblings. She just said, here, boys, it's yours. So anyways, I grew up in the Prince Rupert area where Henry is. So I almost learned Tsimshian before I learned my own language. And since Mom moved us into the city, instead of growing up on the close to the reservation and going to day school, which was a problem for our people, is I ended up graduating from Vancouver Tech, and in grade 11 I got most sportsmanlike athlete. And so her youngest brother, who had died at 23, was one of the most liked Seashell people. So when she heard that I had accomplished this trophy, most sportsmanlike athlete, she gave me her youngest brother's name, and that was Popois. That's where it comes from. So I grew up in Prince Rupert area in the summers. Learned their culture. My aunt married into the Tsimshian, we can't marry anybody in our own village because if you had 400 people, you're talking about inbreeding and too close of family structures. So my aunt was actually, her father was from, and this is how connected we are to the whole coast. Her father was from Port Alberni, a guy named Butch. My mother's father was a non-native guy named Olaf Slavak. And I'm not sure if he was from the interior of BC or he was actually from Holland. But anyways, he was a student back at the time, and I guess my grandmother got frisky on a traveling night from point A to point B, chugging along at 6-8 knots, and dark. Everybody else is sleeping, and I guess because it was August September creation for my mother, so she was born in April, so that's all I could figure. It was a good sockeye year, so lots of lots of energy. And so my grandmother had mixed genes for my mother and my aunt, and with those the mix of genes back into our people, because we had to have it for our culture to live and to survive, because they had destroyed all the houses, all the artwork, almost destroyed the language. It wasn't written until my mother moved back to the Sunshine Coast and started working at putting together interviews with all the elders that were left, and there was over 50 at the time. I think there's less than half a dozen now, people that are fluent speakers of our language. So my mother, over the 20 years, contributed to putting together, without being told what to do, put together the 10,000 word dictionary for our people. So that's, you've got to give her credit and keeping our culture alive.
Wow.
So I've grown up with a view to. My father was a world traveler, and he didn't trust the government either. He did research, showed me how to do it, and from that time on, I have many skills. And we talk about hunting, fishing, how to survive. However, now I have the court experience. And if it wasn't for an elder who we have an alliance with, the Big Stone Cree, Treaty 8, is that the lands of the Chilcotin would never have been returned to the Indian people. And because all the lands have been returned back, there is no other title holders on this land. There never could be. And it goes all the way back to Queen Anne's in 1704. And now we can get into UNDRIP after this, because it's just a natural progression where international politics overrides ours.
Can you explain that other part again, where the land went back? Can you say that again?
Okay, so with the alliance, we picked a case with a property, and Sherry knows where this is, at Burton Road and the highway, and the Royal Bank foreclosed on.
Oh, I saw that on the website or something. Yeah, I read. Okay.
Yeah. And so we challenged that all the way to the Supreme Court. The corporation court ruled in favor of the Royal Bank all the way through. So we ended up leaving the BC Appeal Court for leave to the Supreme Court of Canada. We sent all the documents there. They made a ruling in the federal court that the Crown is neither title of nor possession of lands of BC, meaning Canada. And so that one law applies to all the nations of Canada. It can't just apply to one group of people, one family, or one Indian, right? It applies to all.
When was that again?
June 14th, 2014.
Interesting.
June 19th, somewhere in there. 2014. Anyways, we had filed that case, and it came back that they acquiesced to the questions. Is fee simple land Indian land and is Crown land Indian land? So they agreed. By not stating it, acquiescence, they agreed. And so the next part of this is that without since we weren't lawyers, it never really made. It was done in chambers. The judicial committee handled our protest. There's 17 lawyers that challenged it. Jack Woodward had been one of them, because he came in within a couple months later after the decision. We got it in May, so April, May, I guess we got it. by June, he brought it back to the Supreme Court and said, "Look, you've already made a decision in the matters of Musuya versus the Royal Bank, because he's claimed it as his land for his adopted sons." The court agreed, and so in order to have the Chilcotin land returned, if they had one judge dissent, they would have had to go back to the case of Musuya versus the Royal Bank and change that to including land on every mortgage contract across Canada. Because it's only corporation, it's a commerce thing, and it's owned by the banks. So he said, "You made a decision already. Now you have to give the land back to the Chilcotin." Obviously it was empty, and now the lawyers can say, "Well, it's still Indian land, it's still Crown land because it's Indian land under the Indian Act." Now, that's not true either, because when you give the land back, which has always been ours, so you really can't claim that you had title to it at one time and you're giving it back. As fee simple and Crown land, it's always been Indian land. So these are the court cases now that there are determining, and the Leka'gyet case is one, the Leka'gyet versus the Gold Commissioner just last September. Now the Crown has to consult with the Tsimshian. That's Henry's people too.
Wow.
And so that was two people that intervened. I intervened too. He gave me a couple. His name was Justice Alan Ross. He gave me a couple minutes to speak, and I said, "If you make a mistake, I have to appeal you." He didn't really make a mistake, but he really didn't give us carte blanche over mining rights and anybody that files mining claims. He gave the industry in BC 18 months to clean it up. And I think I do believe the Leka'gyet went back and appealed it on the grounds that they didn't have a right to do that. They should have made it title lands, and any further license applied to on their land should be questioned. So that would be UNDRIP 26, right?
So that's what I was going to say. Interesting time that these things are going to court now, and the land disputes are starting to reach a different level, I guess. And part of that is due to the UNDRIP just talking about the lands not being ceded, really?
Yeah, well, it never happened, never could be. And so if you go into my law book, I had written it in 2009, and it's a decree, meaning that I have a right to declare and make a protest that there's no defense to. I have about 18 articles in it. 12 says you cannot be judge and suitor in the same court. And 1704 Queen Anne says you have a right to a tribunal to appeal any of these matters that these courts, which are newcomers' courts, are deciding against us, because we cannot be dispossessed of our lands on Turtle Island. And so there's been no purchases of land by the Crown. There's no monarchy signature in North America.
Huh.
So does that mean that all the bands are going to end up owning their land? Because my understanding of the Indian Act as it is right now is that, of the 26,000 or 28,000 acres, every acre of it is owned by the Crown.
Well, you've been reading too much about the Indian Act, because the Indian Act isn't even a law. His name is Hamjidis of the Quaqua Chakis band, Port Rupert, Northern Vancouver Island, been in federal court, and I sat right beside him. He says, "Judge, I have to appeal anything that you use in the Indian Act, because unless you come into this court with the 3 readings, the Royal Assent, and the Gazette recording copy of it, you're going to be appealed." Anyways, it took him till January or February the last couple of months ago to come up with a decision. And in the true to form, he didn't make a decision. He just said, "Since you've been using the Indian Act for anybody's purposes, I'm going to leave it in place." And that's what you call their common law, even though it's appealable, and it is being appealed by Hamjidis, and any band can hop in on it and saying, if you haven't got the paperwork that says the Indian Act is a real law of Canada, because according to the now you have to get into the Constitution UK, right? 1982 UK statute law of the UK. The DNA Act has been repealed by Queen Victoria, never been signed. It's always been UK statute. So any law that's made that's repugnant to the imperial law of England is repugnant and ultra virus, especially to us. So now, if you think that there's any kind of a reservation, show me in the Constitution where there's a reservation. Their UK statute. Show me where there's imperial law that says there's a reservation on this land anywhere.
Well, this is interesting because that's kind of the argument I used to get, out of paying taxes, but I can't really verbalize it that well.
That's just done for you.
Yeah, because that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm like, well, this piece of paper says that I have to be on the reserve to do it, but they don't earn the reserves anyway, and I don't see a difference between the reserve and the rest of Canada. My view is that the entire country is my reserve. That's kind of how I look at it.
Now, I've had this discussion because I've been in court against the judges, 3 judges now, stating that there's no law of Canada that shows that the bill of exchange is Canadian law. Now, where's Canada? You just mentioned Canada, the country of Canada. Where's Canada?
Well, I don't know, because it's not my problem. That's kind of how I view it. It's just I'm outside of that jurisdiction, and I'm trying to get as far from it as I can. But
okay, this is the whole problem that people assume. You assume that Canada is a country. It's not. Never has been. 1860 was written as a corporation in on Pennsylvania Avenue in Connecticut or somewhere down there. And further, it's never purchased the lands to be a country. And under international law, you have to have a country, you have to have a population, you have to have a language, a culture, all those 4 things. Canada has not one of those things. And in our law book, Professor Hugo Panarin, a political science, will stand behind that. So it's not a country. Canada is actually considered signed in a box at sea. That's all Canada is. And if you take where it's registered in the United States, Canada is only a colony of the United States then. You have to consider that in 2013, March 28, 2013, it was a corporation still listed. However, by November 30th, 2013, it became a foreign government registered in the UCC in Washington, D.C. as a foreign government. So as a foreign government, it's owned by the shareholders of a foreigner. And that's who makes law here is the king.
The king, like Charles?
Yeah, he owns the shares, yeah. So Trudeau is just a puppet of his.
Well, they still have that picture of the. I mean, I haven't been in the police station lately, but the last time I went in there to bitch at him during COVID, they still had the picture of the Queen up in the corner there, and I was like, "Who the fuck do you work for, dude?"
Yeah, well, the Queen's dead, so yeah, it's just what the crown. How do you think the crown got established? That's what you're talking about is Canada. How do you think the crown got established?
Hudson's Bay Company.
I'm just being facetious. I can answer it too if you. I'll just give you a head start.
Can I ask a question, Popois?
Sure.
What is the difference, like when you say the crown, and I'm assuming you mean that Hudson's Bay Corporation?
I asked you the question first. What was the ship called before the crown? You answered that already.
What was the
What was the ship called before the crown?
What was the ship called before the crown? Hudson's Bay Corporation. No?
Canada.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
After 1933, the bankers raised the ship and called it the crown.
Yeah.
So the crown is actually the government and how would you say it, an assumed presumed sovereignty on our land, only at gunpoint. And so they've kept the illusion that Canada's a country with a crown, and it's only been in place since the bankruptcy. So
But I
it's not
mean,
a country.
for all intents and purposes, it's acting as one, and everybody thinks it's one. So I mean, it's pretty confusing it's hard for me to wrap my head around all this stuff. But I mean, so where does that leave us then? Because that's sort of what Darren's been talking about, and what we've been talking about, sort of at a higher level, is that the land problem seems to be that. I don't even know if I want to start this. Do you want to take over, Darren, from this? Or
What do you want? What?
well, the land, because everybody thinks that the Indigenous have these reservations and they don't own the land, right? I mean, they're still just on the Crown's land. So so where would this ideally go? Like, would you just get rid of the reservation? Like, how, you know what I mean? Like, we talked at the beginning too, Sherry. Sherry and I were kind of just brainstorming some stuff about like the divisiveness that's coming from the government on all this. Like, people have a fear about,
Okay,
how this will come about. So like, I don't want to get too tied into like the.
Let me simplify matters then. The crown is owned by King Charles, right?
Yeah.
As we assume and presume.
Yeah.
And I have a document from the Privy Council UK. There's no jurisdiction in North America because they don't own the lands. So if they have no jurisdiction in North America, that means the Privy Council Canada has no jurisdiction in North America because it's a subsidiary in EGDRS of the UK Privy Council. And if each province that has a crown, suppose the lieutenant governor represents the crown. However, there's a gal here in BC, Monticello or something her name was, says I cannot sign into anything the law. And so when you say that lieutenant governor is a de facto seat of the governor general, which is a de facto seat of the Privy Council Canada, another de facto organization of the UK Privy Council, there is no jurisdiction for a crown on this land.
Yeah.
So is that why they kind of started changing that crown into the Canadian government? Is that what that sort of transition is? That sort of,
Yeah, no, that's what is the government, is the crown, the assumed jurisdiction of a corporation. That's who the Law Society represents, the crown.
Well, boys, can you give these guys a little background about your training in natural law through STEMAS and who STEMAS is?
Seamas was a fisherman too. Great storyteller. His name in the Big Stone Cree was Tobacco Man. He smoked like a chimney. He finally, cancer got to him from prostate, but it was funny. It wasn't in his blood. He had taken Indian medicine and his blood was clear. And the doctor was so amazed that they wanted him to give up the what he was using. Anyways, the cancer grew on his flesh on the inside of his body, came up by his kidney, then went to the other kidney, went to his belly button, and it ended up consuming him. He ended up having colon cancer, stomach cancer, and then brain cancer, and he passed away. And right to the day before I left him, he still wanted to argue with me. That's how he was a fighter right to the end. And so we went to court many occasions. He did the speaking, I did the writing. So for the first 4 years, 2008 to 2014, I did the writing for all our cases. So when I talk about Busuia versus the World Bank, I did the writing. So I know firsthand that that's what we argued about. And when I know that there is no land on mortgages in a case that we were with Justice Leask, CMS and him had an argument. And the first part was, you know what? Objection, Your Honor. And Justice Leask says, what do you object about, CMS? What's it about? He says, if this lawyer uses the Indian Act, I have to go and charge you with genocides downstairs. Okay, no Indian Act in this court. That was the first time that we actually got it turned over. And so a lot of bantering between STEMAS and Justice League. He was actually really a good listener. And STEMAS says, you don't own your land. It's all Indian land. And so that was what was at issue here was two Native people, one from Squamish, one from Tsleil-Waututh, challenging over whether the Squamish woman had the right to sell the take over the Tsleil-Waututh property. So we represented Tsleil-Waututh. She had her own lawyer, whatever, and it ended up saying that CMS, yeah, I own my own land, and this is just as lease, and CMS says, I've gone through 1,000, mortgages, and it's not over land because you don't own your land. He says, sure I do. Well, okay, million pennies. And the Justice Lease came in, and the next court session, maybe the next day, his head bowed. He said, Steemas, you're right. I don't own my land. So the fact is, nobody in Canada owns their land. So anybody that says UNDRIP is going to take your land away, they can't. There's nothing for them to take away. They never had it. So there's no Crown that owns land here. And with that Monsieur versus the Royal Bank case, they says the Crown is neither title of nor possession of Crown land in BC or Canada, in fact.
And Steemas was
was the speaker.
He was also Gabriel Dumont's son, right?
Great grandson, yeah, great grandnephew.
And that Gabriel Dumont was Louis Riel's right-hand man.
Yeah. So Steemas had a fight. Actually, Louis Riel's great grandniece in about 2010, her and Steemas were sitting in the same courtroom in BC Supreme Court on this Mouchouet versus the Royal Bank case. So the challenge is still here.
Darren, do you want to continue on with
that land, up for the taking then? Is that our land ours to take then? Can we be developing? Can we be doing resources? Can we be doing the mines and the shit that the federal government then seems to be able to withhold these provinces from doing because, it's about time.
Well, without Canada, and we've dissolved Canada, we've asked for the dissolution of it. However, if Trudeau prorogues that he knows that he'll never get back in, and Canada's finished, because we have a following of over 60-70% of people that don't want that government. So if he prorogues it, it'll be over for him. So he can't prorogue it right now.
I think that Darren, I think what's really missing is a big huge potlatch needs to happen for all of the original peoples to come together and decide on the governance of the country is basically, and then and to send out a message to the settlers, us settlers, that we're not going to just uproot you, walk with us, which is pretty much a very peaceful. I think about how strong and peaceful this approach is. It's amazing, and I feel that the message needs to get out there to people to not fear,
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, I guess I'd be interested to hear Popois' take on that, because who is that? Because I mean, I was kind of trying to figure out that myself. I made this mailing list and started my Indigenous Opinions publication, and I went through the internet for weeks and found, went through every single band in Canada and found every band that had the chief or the council or their email or whatever I can find for traditional chiefs. But is it the band? Is it I'm not convinced that it's the councils. I'm not convinced that they can help us. And I can't find a way to get past them.
Well, right now I'm friends with the agreement that BC and Canada is trying to sign with the HIDA. I know I just seen another report saying that they're actually penciling in that all the lands are going to be HIDA lands. However, they're trying to hold on to the fee simple and Crown lands, and that's 50% of the lands of Haida Gwaii. And Destry, he's a baker. He's his family's from the South Island, Graham Island, and his cousin Richard Lance Baker is part of the family from the North Island. And from what I gather, they aren't in agreement with what's taking place with that agreement. They actually say no. So with another piece of property, and I speak with the Samaquam and the Wannock. Wannock is trying to separate from the other band, Kwantlen, because in the 40s or 30s or 40s they amalgamated the two bands. The chief or something of the Kwantlen had they were without a chief, so they put them both together. So anyways, the autonomy of the Wannock has been kept under wraps by the supposedly a chief of the Kwantlen. So they went to court, and actually, the setup of another type of council for the Kwantlen was, I tried to speak on behalf of the Wannock. I put an affidavit in, and the lawyer wouldn't submit it to the judge to be heard. And so the Wannock weren't even heard in that courtroom. Yet they are a people with their own administration and their own lands. Kwantlen is on the south side of the river. The Wannock are on the north. So what? And we were talking about the information that Ron Vallant. Do you know who he is? I don't think much of. I don't think much of his research.
Well, I think the big part about what Ron Vallant and Bruce Party are saying is that UNDRIP is really just an acknowledgement, but they are really trying to be pushy and pushing over and creating legislation that makes it, still have government controls over these lands by working through the band councils and by holding legislation that says ministers have to have a vote and decision as equal to anyone in the Indigenous who's in powers. So it's also another smoke and mirrors as far as I can see. And that's what I think Bruce Party and that Ron Vallant are pointing out.
Well, he makes false statements, and private land is still Indian land, no matter how you look at it. And so if he thinks, if you think that we're interested in every farm and every house that's on the land, isn't true. So everybody that thinks they're going to lose their lands to Indians isn't true either. So his comments that the UN has control over here, all it is the UN has made a statement that Indigenous governance exists. And now, if you think that governance exists, you have to now look at whether band councils have the authority.
Indigenous self-governance exists.
Yeah, not a band council.
Which kind of opens it up to, like, why don't we all have that right? Right?
I've had a discussion with another one of our members and stuff about what white rights are, and those rights are only a privilege. And so when you talk about what your privilege is the underlying title is still with the original people. So if you want to argue about everybody has a right, then you're assuming jurisdiction that goes 40,000 years, and that population doesn't have that right go 40,000 years. And Henry Green can. So his people have been the governments on the land, whereas as old as anybody that traveled to this land. So you have to consider that there is a governance structure, all across Canada, and that exists still. Yeah. And Sherry's been privileged to the Camel's Eye Treaty of 408. That was written with a worldly body.
408 AD. They already knew about us. That was the Lakotas. That was at that treaty in 408 AD in Europe.
Yeah, we helped solve the Roman wars and the wars in India. We're actually shown our canoes on the beach of India, on the walls of New Delhi. the University of New Delhi. So we've been called upon to save the world on a number of times, a number of occasions.
Create peace and create treaty, and so what's that? Just right there, I mean, that just wipes the doctrines of discoveries right off the map.
There's never been a doctor. That's just an issue of the church enforcing its. Well, we found it, we're claiming it.
I guess I could reword my statement about, I don't mean white people in Canada. I mean humanity in general on the earth. Like, I think that the UN wants to write all these, the 17 sustainable goals and all these things that sound very fluffy and nice, and everybody's got rights, but it's a smokescreen, like Sherry said. But when you read into that, the UNDRIP stuff, it seems a little more of what it should be for everybody.
Yeah, of course. So that's our doctrine, because so far Canada is the only sovereign country of the world right now.
I was going to ask you about that. Is not Australia and New Zealand aren't?
No, they're the corporations. They're corporate entities. They're all foreign governments under the Commonwealth.
So
Canada's in the same boat as New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah,
on the same boat, same boat, so to speak.
Yeah. So are you? Is this alliance happening then right now too? Is that we talked a little bit about the council from 13 to 25, but there's also the alliance of Indigenous nations. Is this sort of what's happening to help increase like awareness? Are people sort of catching on to all this, and there's going to be a little bit more pushback?
Pushback on
against the government for land, like.
Well, the land is kind of. With Pugon taking their lands back, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba all defaulted in their treaties. There is no corporation allowed to exist on the lands without permission from the Indigenous. So Pugon lands, in court, they don't have the documents. That means they're only a corporation that haven't paid their bills on the land. And here's a story that happened in Winnipeg. After meeting with the people there and the hereditary and the clan mother, they said that Winnipeg was 40 years in behind payments for their treaty lands. So at Camp Hope, where the meeting and the conference was, a lot of people speaking, and there's two officers outside. And I said, "Yeah, I'm Popois, and I'm with the people of the Salmon." And by the way, that the city of Winnipeg is 40 years behind on their lease payments. I gave him my card. Turned around to face somebody else, answer a question or something. I turned around and those guys weren't even in sight anymore. Within a minute or 2 minutes, they had left the scene. They knew what it meant that they had no jurisdiction. So as much as they were there, they had no right to be there.
I guess my question, what I'm wondering is when is it going to start to, like, this is all great that it's sort of becoming aware of all this, but when is it going to start to be put into practice? Like, or I guess, or you know what I mean? Like, when are they going to start to, I don't know, you know what I mean, Darren? Like, acknowledge it,
or one of the fucking apple cart episode. When would it be something other than acknowledging your treaty land bullshit at the start of all these speeches and man, shut the fuck up. And I mean, and I'm the guy muttering stuff in the back and people, and I'm like, well, I'm the Indian in the room, dude. I'm allowed to say this is bullshit. I'm allowed to say this is bullshit. So I don't know. I mean, because it's kind of, this kind of adds to one of a bunch of things that is going on in the background, because I don't know if Canada was a country, but I'm a firm believer that it's not going to be a country for very much longer. It's on the way. Graham and I were just joking before, because I could kind of almost see a future where the Indians get some land, and then it's kind of weird to see what that looks like, because it is kind of a negotiation at this point, because we've kind of got this. Everyone's here now, and I got no problem with my neighbors. I got my problems with the federal government. So we got to figure out a way to how to back out of this. I mean, how we can back into not having a government, or what this looks like. What does it look like for us to coexist with it? Because, it all falls apart if I don't want to start fighting over it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good point. It's a good question too. And anybody that's sitting in discussions like this, yeah, it's a good question, Darren. And if you were to put on your hands how many people that have a solution to the matter, you might have me. And since we started this the games of court and making court cases, all adding up into where we are today. This Rod Valent talks about the detriments. Whoever his people are talk about detriments. Who's that? The other guy, Christopher James, talks about all the problems that everybody has, but nobody's got a solution. Nobody wants to identify the original people have the law and has the force of law internationally as well as
the big
locally.
problem. We keep approaching it from we need to get something from them instead of we already have it. We already have it. We're not coming to the table. We're at the table. We're at the head of the table.
We are the head of the table, yes. So I've said that all along. We've met. We have clan mothers, and we have the alliance set up to move forward. In order to be sovereign, there's two aspects to it: your own money and your own military as a security force for protection and to protect your money. And those two parts have been because they won't give us any money to fight themselves, right? A band council cannot use their money to enforce issues against their their hosts. And if you knew what the original 21 reasons for the Indian Act was, that we couldn't hire a lawyer, we couldn't raise money, we couldn't have an assembly, we couldn't go off the band without a permit, we couldn't do this. And now they want to put everybody in a 15-minute city. We've been on 15-minute cities for 100 years. So
reservations are 15-minute cities.
pretty well. So the question is are we prepared as the Council of 25 to be recognized internationally? Yes. We have a number of countries that want to join us. We have our own banking, Salmon Eagle Bank, ready to be implemented. We need the money to do the coding for it, but we have all the principles. And right now, we have actually a way that you could put money into a bank other than Canada. So we're that close to setting up our own or financial institution.
And what is it called?
The Salmon Eagle Bank.
And the alliance is the Peoples of the Salmon?
Yep. I'm the CEO of that too.
Okay.
We have another fellow that's, if you're capable of doing the research, he was on the team that developed the Intel processor for Microsoft. That's how good of a program that we've got to use. So with that said, we are knocking at the door of international banking and trade. We're at the point. We haven't got a military. Canada hasn't got a military because it's owned by King Charles. King Charles pays the bill. The RCMP are owned by King Charles as well. It's the Royal Mounted Police of the Catholic Church, right? So there is actually no military force to protect the rights of our people, and that's something we have to consider. And we are. I have a number of marshals and a marshal system that's ready to go to be in place. And you know what? If we had 60% of the people of Kinatsini say yes, we will come to be your neighbor and that'd be a good neighbor just on your lands. They don't have to be an Indian unless they accept the 7 teachings and started, helping and moving, society and humanity forward. And now I've dealt with lots of people, infiltrators, that they cried because they were becoming a Wolverine. They were going to be accepted as adopted on the land. When we've and Musqueam, has a problem with that because people that come and join us are still egotistical people. even though that they say, well, yeah, we can, we'd like to walk with all the people and be in peace and harmony. They're infiltrators that try to change things as soon as they get into any kind of authority.
Yeah.
I've seen it half a dozen times, and actually, AIN is actually going through it now.
And
They
AIN is
just,
the Alliance of
of
Indigenous
Indigenous
Nations.
Nations. So some of the people that left us ended up on their doorstep, almost doing the same thing.
This is the eternal problem with revolution,
Yeah, well, there's some people that probably want to do it better, or like they say, they don't necessarily follow what the hereditary and the I want to say the spiritual connection is.
Right.
And they look at it from their own eyes, and
They could be hired NAFO, actually, implants,
yeah,
to be honest.
sometimes they are.
What implants? NAFO?
Yeah.
What's
Because basically it's something I always forget the acronym for it, but something like New and Fellows Organization. It's like basically it's a spy network.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Huh.
And some people are actually hired to go into groups, act like they belong, and actually encourage certain things, come up with real libertarian type of conceptual directions, and try to infiltrate the group with those directions, and then kind of make the group fall apart and create divisiveness. That's sort of the kind of mission that an AFO would do.
So we had that experience in 2021, 22. And I can't deal with them, because anything that you say, we had a report that our information went straight to Krista Freeland.
Wow.
Yeah. That was from a high level agent that knew her by the first name and told us that we were infiltrated.
Yeah, that's crazy. Before I forget to ask this question, what's the difference between, or what's the significance of the hereditaries versus the band councils? And is that something, I think that's something that should be described maybe for people?
Sure. A band council is and these is a fiction of the fiction of the Indian Act.
Okay.
Voting and process under democracy and government rule. The Indian Act has never been a law. However, it's a set of conditions that, okay, you want some money, you have to work this way, and this is the policy you have to employ. We're giving you 860,000, but you got to go and vaccinate all your people. They're voted in people. They don't have any respect for the land, but they've been taught well how to be slave masters. Keep the people down. Don't give them anything. But you know what? You can take as much as you want, and the Squamish people have been through that. They've had hundreds of millions of dollars go through their hands, and they can't account for it. So the cousin of a relative of ours, Don Matthias, has taken them to court and won some action against them. So band councils, family, nepotism. They actually, the Stevens case versus Stony Band in Alberta states that their jurisdiction stops at the border of a reservation. So fiction and a fictional boundary means they have no ruling outside what would be a hereditary's lands. So now you're talking about hereditary that have been in the clans and the ruling families of all the people for hundreds of years, thousands of years. The Blackfeet are operated by Red Crow's wife. Red Crow is one of the chiefs of the Blackfeet. His wife are the other two, Eugene Fox and Mojisto and Chris Shade. So those are the hereditary people that have the duty to look after the people. Musqueam for the Pugon. The Thunderbird clan in Saskatchewan, they declared 126,000 square miles of their lands. Canada can't give it back to them because it's already theirs. They just stated that this is what our land is.
When did they do that?
We did that in what was it? Probably February.
Like approximately.
January, February 2023.
Oh, so just very recently.
Yeah, we met
Yeah.
with there's 26 people that signed the document with a couple of hereditary with witnesses.
What were they called again?
The Thunderbird clan,
Thunderbird Clan. Okay.
a part of the Pugon 2, Treaty 6. So they made a declaration, and we're here to help them move it forward. They're part of our alliance, and we'll stand for their rights as the rest of the alliances.
So just out of curiosity, then that 126,000, where was that? Where was that? Was it Crown? Was it reservation?
No such thing as Crown. No such thing as
No,
reservation.
no, but I mean, as
That's
it's sort of
probably from
perceived by the people.
from the Saskatchewan River north to the northern boundary of newest territories to the border of Manitoba, all the way to halfway through Alberta.
Oh yeah, I think we heard about this. Hey, Darren, did we hear about this? Did we talk about this one? Maybe not.
I don't know. I don't know, but it's kind of because when I was down, there seems to be something going on in that Flathead reservation down in Montana, because it's the only reservation that I've been on in the States or in Canada that has, you go there, there's Best Westerns, there's a bunch of, it's like business as usual. You could be in any other town in Montana, but you very clearly drive on the reservation. It seems to be governed by the reservation. It seems. Have you looked into that system at all? What they're doing down there? Because it seems like they're collecting a bunch of that tax revenue as well. Which, I mean, the argument that I want to go to my neighbors with is, hey man, this shit sucks. This ain't great. It's not going to be worse if we go back to. If we go back to Indian land, it's probably gonna be better off in the end. It's a lot more freedom and a lot less taxes.
Well, we don't have to charge tax.
Darren, I think that if we followed the 7 teachings or 7 laws of the original peoples, there would be the natural law of peace would just exist. People would be disciplined in the tribunal way that would make people feel welcome to, okay, so I screwed up and now I'm being told how to change myself and be accepted. Like there's a whole different reality of making this world back to a beautiful place that it is meant to be. And I feel that these 7 laws are just it. Humanity is forgotten. There's no connection. Quatlina.
Gwinaalth means I've a yield or a finished, and can come back and speak again later.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree. I mean, I got a kind of an odd question. I want to ask Darren. I would like Darren to keep going if he can. I don't want to derail it with a bit of an offside question. Darren, if you have any other land sort of questions, if we want to stay on that topic at all, or and also Sherry, where can we get the 7? Where are the 7 laws?
Well, boys, would you share that?
Yeah, you put it on the chat. Yeah, put it on the chat. The other people that come and go aren't they're not necessarily aware of the 7 teachings. They claim that they're spiritual. They claim that they're in peace. They claim that they're in love, but not in love, not in spiritual.
I'll put that in the show notes because it's.
So I've been in court with the Siouxmet by Chase or by the Kamloops area. The staff, the Canaan Authority is with Skolam, one of our tribunal members. And Spewy is from Chase. He's with us too. Is the land question is that there's it's never been purchased, therefore it's always been the title lands of the people living in that community, and only because Begbie came into the interior, hung 5 because they brought the smallpox, and they're missing 100,000 people. Took authority and hung 5 chiefs And what they had done in their culture and the first law of the land was take justice for the family that these two settlers murdered one of their children. And so they, as a governing body of people, that's what they did. They took justice and put to death these two settlers. Begbie went up wanting, oh, we gotta have a meeting. And this is the various ways that the English did business. Well, can we have a meeting? Yeah, it was just a way to say, well, come and chat with us, and we'll take you in and hang you. And so they took him up to Gwinaalth and hung those 5 chiefs, 5 headsmen, and then went back to Victoria like nothing happened, and formed a government without the majority of the Indian people on the coast.
Wow. When was that again?
1860.
Wow.
So Begbie set up government in Victoria without the information or the actual title holders. At the time, Douglas was writing and communicating with Downing Street in England, asking for money to buy the lands that he had to purchase, because that was King George's proclamation. We have to buy the lands and only by us. No private person, society, corporation, or colony can occupy lands without first purchased by us. And that's imperial law. So Downing Street said to James Douglas, no, yeah, it's an issue for you to settle there. So they never did buy any land. So what Begbie did was actually set up a government that never included us. 1871, 1876 come along, they started this Indian Act, which was totally fictitious, and then assumed that they have authority over the lands. However, Queen Victoria said and revoked all Crown agents, heirs, and successors to any lands of Canada. Now Washington has that document. And so there is no foreign government on our land, just an assumed crown and a crown, which is a governing structure. And they have the courts, so they enforce it for the corporation. So the land issue has to be addressed by the first law of the land. And in Kamloops, which I was getting to, asked, because I was defending a gal that was claiming to be the Chief Justice of the Chilcotin, how do you have a country within a country? Well, first of all, your country doesn't even exist. So having a country within a country it's our country, and yours doesn't exist. So we only have one country. We're the first law of the land. And anything that BC, Canada, or the provinces have is corpus juris secundum. And that goes back to the Meredith Quinn and Lester House. And I even used it. Corpus juris secundum. You're only a second body of law in our land. So the first law is our people. They're hereditary. They're the holders and the keepers of the land. Anybody that wants immunity from the crown, yeah, join us.
What about people, like there's a comment in the chat here. It's like everybody has been nomadic. Every nation has fought each other. No one is privileged in their ancestry. When you take the land back, do we then get rid of the settlers' innovations? Like, there's that whole sort of pushback against it, that it's always sort of just part of what humanity and what we've been doing forever. Like if you go back far enough, there's been, takeovers and colonialism and settlers going on all the time. Like when do we get to just start fresh, I guess?
Well, it's kind of funny because there cannot be another kingdom on this land, because we already had a kingdom that 572 arrows by Cheecook, some of the soda from the back east, and his family is still alive and well, as researched by BC, and his name is Stephen Ajakote. Gunny was his name, and that's who Queen Victoria spoke to in the bargain. As long as one Indian stands, it'll always remain Indian land, and that's what the proclamation always proclamations have stated since 1704. 1763, 1835, the bargain 1835, Queen Victoria 1901, and New Westminster 1946 all speak that we are the holders of the land. We're not, talking about rights and innovation and in Vanderpeek, just as Shelby said, and the Crown is talking about fishing rights and what you do with your first fish. And he told the judge told the reasons for judgment says that this Indian has a right to do whatever he wants with his property, whether it's the first fish or the last fish, and that Indian rights are not frozen in time, and they can change. So, and that change is only because Canada pays the band councils. It's changed their attitude, saying that there is more life at the other end of the being, unless you're an agent of Canada, there's more life on the other side with us, knowing that we have access to the money. And I never thought it a big issue of having to fight the band councils, because once the money dries up in Canada or Canada dries up, they dry up too. And we'll support the hereditaries.
Huh. I was kind of going to ask you, I mean, this might, hopefully this is an okay question, but, or I got to figure out how to word it. But it's almost like what Sherry was talking about with that infiltration. Like, how do you, as a CEO of a new alliance of Indigenous nations and all this, that might not be the right term, but the peoples of the salmon, discern between a lot of the new age of NGOs and charities and front organizations from the WEF or the UN that are sort of creating division and sort of accelerating the culture war in here. There's a big sort of like I don't want to use the word woke, but that's kind of what it ends up being. I mean, people that are pushing also big pharma procedures. I mean, there's an alliance between sort of like the UN, the WEF, the big pharma, like and they've got so many NGOs and all these money laundering organizations that I'm sure that you have to kind of try and discern like how not to get involved with them or how to be careful with them or to not succumb to the funding that they might offer you.
That's a big question, because all you're wanting to determine is how much influence has world politics got over our people and the Alliance of Kinaton,
because it's everywhere else. Yeah,
because first of all, the UN has no right on our land, and they've had it in by grand jury document sent to the headquarters in New York. You're not allowed to come on these lands without the prior written consent by our people. In any national court, that stands up. What doesn't stand up is one tribe going to the criminal court in Europe, and the Mohawk did that in 1960. They didn't get anywhere because they were not a country. So as our people have come together under a flag, and it represents trade, good peace, trade, and good governance to all the countries that want to join us. And there is a shitload of people, a lot of countries that want to join us, both from the sovereign banking point of view, outside the WF and cabal. And it would seem that we have enough money to challenge these WF and WHO and whatever organizations that are on these lands. So we can challenge them.
That's great news. I mean, that's it. If I do feel like there's sort of a revolution or like a movement of sovereignty happening all over, and I guess you're going to ride that wave, hopefully, and maybe lead some of it, because people might jump on that are just also, they just want that same sovereignty. I mean, they've sort of overstretched the tyranny here, and people are waking up left, right, and center from what the government's doing. So
let's put it this way: if you were to, if 5 or 10% of the population of what the citizens of Canada say, I want a new government, and we move forward, the Alliance of Kinaton to move forward. And my vision is that we have to get recognized as KAN at the UPU, we have the countries that want to recognize us internationally already, and there's anywhere up to a dozen countries that will sign on with us. So Canada becomes a world country operated by a council of 25. We're not shelving Canada and all its privileges that they gave the people. You know, the pension's still around. We'll just find a way to make it better. We'll bring a wallet through our banking system that gives people access to all the bills, which they should have already. And we're already at that point of giving, of having our discharge our debt, you know, through HJR 192 of the U.S. Public Law. And we're learning how to use it. And one of our tribunals already used U.S. law. I've been in 3 courts, and you know, just off the topic is that the judges are still siding by Canada. Well, you haven't made any law that recognizes an IBO in Canadian law. And now we go back and say, Canadian, where's that? And what's that? Because you're registered in the U.S. under Securities and Exchange. So I have a level 3 audit coming. That once I do this level 3 audit, it shows all the money that has been made on this mortgage from day one gets put in my hands, and I go back into court. That's over for the big banks if it's made public.
When's that going to happen, do you think?
It's in the process of being made now, so probably within a week or two, and then right after that, I go to court again in the appeal court of BC.
Yeah, and then what's after that for the peoples of the salmon? Well,
first of all, I get my my house put back in order and look at moving the banking system forward. Part of this, what I mentioned with JD Anderson, we have to court an ambassador to the king, recognized in court. The judge, while he was speaking, the prosecutor and the lawyers were badgering him. So she said, recess for 10 or 15 minutes. She went and checked out his credentials and came back and said, yeah, you guys don't badger him anymore. He's an ambassador to the new country. I believe that's what was said. I'm trying to find out what that court case is. So he's said he couldn't give us the document that he signed last January, or no, June, for the Council of 25. He says it was too soon and he couldn't do it. And so now he's ready to divulge, and he has to send this court case to King Charles, and then from there we may be on our own.
Wow! And what
he also stated that 10% of the trust money that you were talking about earlier will pay off all the debt of Canada and the U.S.
Wow! So what was that acronym? Recognize them as EPN, you said, or something? With the new country, it would be recognized.
UPU.
UTU?
UPU, which is the United Postal Union. That's where all the countries have communication with.
Oh, I see.
And 60% of the UN countries probably will join us if they know who we are. Without Trudeau.
No Trudeau. Well, this has been great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting. And hopefully it keeps going. I mean, there does seem to be something in something's rumbling, you know, all over the place. I can feel it. I think a bunch of people can feel it. It just the timing seems right.
We'll be tied in the banking system to the lumens and the stellar system with Russia and China. I'm not afraid of that. We have our own coding and our own system, and so it's just the settlement side of things. We are thinking of tying our currency to an ounce of gold, which is about 60 or 70 cents, $70 per US per Canadian per ounce, or 70 US. Be tied to a barrel of oil. Be tied to probably so many bushels of wheat. So we can actually make our assets and in ground. And I was telling you a story about the Samaquim and the Wannock. those bands along the river don't want to meet with us because they don't want to give up their meal ticket to that they're getting from Canada. And that's the way they look at the money that you're talking about paying band councils. These guys don't want to give up their yet.
Yeah.
Between you and I, they're sitting on a $1 trillion process, land process, land development, land mine, and golden thing. And I've known it since probably the 80s. I have the report on it. Yet they want the handouts from Canada over this.
Yeah.
How do you fathom that?
I guess
Well,
they haven't been jabbed enough, I guess.
Short-sightedness and just ignorance, really. It's just not knowing. It's not knowing. It's not trying to get that past the band council. I mean, the internet's helping. That's probably arguably the one thing that's really able to push it forward in a lot of ways, is that we can really communicate with each other with it, we were talking about before, 100 years ago you couldn't even leave the reserve, so it's pretty hard to get organized then. And even when Oka happened in 93, even then we weren't really in a space where we could get organized quickly. And it took a while before we were able to, as all the bands sort of start to come together and put enough pressure on the government that they had no choice but to inevitably back down. Nowadays, with the internet and social media, I mean, shit can go to fucking 6 to 100 like that, like in a week. You can just have boom. We're going. Everything's blocked off. Fuck off.
The only thing I have trouble doing is when I listen to people that talk about the problems with no solution, and they don't offer any solution either. And Ron Vellon is one of those guys. Even one of our own people talk about, unceded land of Vancouver is going to, it's going back to the Indians. You're going to lose all your lands. Jesus. The fear mongering that's easy to make out there because they don't have a solution.
Was Party saying that too, or was it just Vallon?
Vallon had another one of our people on with him. They were talking about the UNDRIP and the UN in Vancouver.
Okay.
This is a couple months back though. Anyways, I wasn't happy with that. I listened to part of it. And then when they talk about, they're just fear mongering. They're making the UN look like they're kings. And actually, they're only kings if you give them that right. However, those UN that were on the convoy in Ottawa, those were all mercenaries with designation from the UN. They weren't UN. They were puppets of Trudeau. The same thing happened in Hay River too. Those weren't UN people. They were mercenaries from another country, and supposedly Iran or something. I had the copy of the crest from one of them that was a guard from Iran or somewhere that way. So these people are using fear mongers of the UN is here, they're taking your lands, whatever. Well, we got to fight Dr. Hoff with the DEW weapon that destroyed Lytton.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought happened too.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's same thing. Lahaina, same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
So when we get to the sovereignty, then we'll have people with.
We're gonna get dude.
Well, I pray every week that we are invisible to the enemy.
Paint the roof.
Or we need somebody like Putin to put that away, put that aside, and stop it. Turkey.
We should join the BRICS. I mean, I feel like they're gonna have a better currency.
We will. I've already put it out there that I put it on the creators, on the path to the creator, the wind to the creator. That's when you put something on the wind. It's already there. It's already there.
Well, Popois, Sherry, this has been great. I mean, this has been, an hour and 15 minutes flies by. We'll have to do this again. We should do this like quarterly or something like that and get an update, because it is, I'm kind of, right there with you in a different way. Fighting the battle from a different angle, so we should keep up on it. We should keep it together, and I'd like more information on the. I mean, my chief and me don't really get along, but whatever. I'd still like all the information.
Yeah, Spooey's the same way. He fought with his people. He got thrown in the clinker for 30 days because he wouldn't take the liens off his band. On the other hand, Henry went to court one of the Simpson young men fishing the river outside Terrace, and the judge was so taken back by him. And he said, "You go back 4,000 to 40,000 years? Yeah. How far do you want to go back?" He says, "Can you put that in writing and sign it for me?" Anyways, that was a case that DFO resigned from, dismissed it because they had no call. So when we talk about first law of the land, we are right there.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of just, pretending I know what I'm doing, and so I'd say I'm just practicing it without, I'm just like, nah, man, you don't have jurisdiction over me. Show me the piece of paper that says you can tell me what to do here, because I don't see that shit. I see like we can work alongside each other and we're gonna do some stuff, and you're gonna do your thing. I don't see anything that says you're gonna tell me what to do. I missed that part.
Musqua is in court with because his son gave his ID, gave him an estoppel, and then this cop tried to take his key out of the cage, so he took his foot off the brake. The guy went, fell out of the window or far out of the car or something, and I scraped his knee or something. But anyways, 5 months later, he comes back with 7 or 8 officers on the road, stops this young man. He doesn't get him out of the car, so they break his windows, drag him out, put him in detention. And then they had to let him go the next day without a warrant and without a ticket.
Oh, wow.
That's how bad they are.
Hmm.
So they're losing. They're losing all the way around.
Yeah, and they're running out of money too. So I mean,
There is no money. Yeah,
should
no money.
That should accelerate things. Where can people find your stuff? Where can they? Is there a website where people can get?
Salmon.org. Yeah.
What was
we
that?
need more people. We need more volunteers. Yeah, peoplesofthesalmon.org or Popois at protonmail.com. If we were to put $5 million in, I'd say we'd have a bank operating in the next 3 to 4 months.
Nice.
We already have Kakialis people in Wyoming who has the TNIB bank, and I think they have an API already formed in U.S. law and access to an account in Europe. So anybody can go on their website, get a individual application or a corporate application and fill it out, and transfer money from any SWIFT code bank here in Canada, U.S., and put it into a foreign bank. So awesome. That's really possible.
Right on.
Right on. Well, this has been great, guys. We appreciate you coming on the show. Well, like I say, we'll have to keep in touch and do this again. And
call me anytime if you got any questions and see what's going on. I'd love to have more people that are more due to Sherry. I'm here because she knows you two, yeah. And it was only in 2021, November 11th, 2021, when I started speaking.
Wow.
That was the first time in the public.
When I kind of started poking at the topic as well was around 2021's when my book came out. So it must have been a little before that. But I've been saying for a couple of years now that it's the assimilated Indians. I mean, it's ironic because at the end of the day, it's going to be the assimilated Indians that are going to be their downfall. They assimilated just enough to become lawyers and become educated in their ways enough to fight them on their level. It's like they wanted us all assimilated, and that didn't work out. And so their Indian problem kind of just has escalated and percolated quietly in the background. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the assimilated ones that are going to know their system well enough to exploit it well enough to beat them at their own game. So it's perfectly ironic.
Yep. So thank you. Yeah, we get this message out that, there's 65-70% of the people that don't want Trudeau. If those people decide they want me as the headsman or people of the Council of 25 to be the new government, we can force the issue with Canada. But I got to know that there's $65 million in their bank account somewhere.
Yeah.
From $1 from each person.
Yeah. Well, at minimum, I mean, we should have a political party. Well, at a minimum, we should.
With the democracy and the voting is that you show that you're not mentally capable of making a decision on your own, and you give up your power of attorney to somebody, so you don't want to vote.
Yeah, I get it.
I like the council idea.
Same thing. Give away your power so somebody else tells you what to do. tells you when you go to the bathroom and you can go to the movie, and if you haven't got enough social credits, they'll be telling you can't have a beer now.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, not over my dead body. I mean, it could come to that, but at least it'll come to that. Guys and gals, this has been great. Have a wonderful rest of the night.
I'd like to have this property here that I'm looking at here, this 5-acre parcel, has 2 or 3 buildings. I'd like to set up and if there's a way to do it, set up a conference center, with a full government opportunity here, and from here. We're on sovereign land, could be make this sovereign and then go across Canada with some buildings, similar type of operation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Downstairs is a bigger room, almost as big as this behind me. Downstairs could have video and seats and conference, and you sit and at big mics and a full full audio of the people sitting there and recorded.
Yeah,
that's what we need.
Absolutely, it's a start. We'll just keep going, and this has been great, guys. Have a wonderful night.
Yeah,
you too, guys. Thanks. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too.
Ada Nanat and Chawap. Thank you.
Yeah.
Miigwech in Ojibwe. That was great. Big thanks to Popois, and I keep saying that wrong. I just can't get it right. And Sherry for coming on the show. It's too bad we didn't get the third, but it was still great. We had a great time.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, honestly, it's still, we've had a couple of like these common law type episodes as well. Like I would put that in the category of law, and I have a hard time wrapping my head around it.
It's way harder for you being white. I get it. I get it. For me, like the common law stuff is super empowering for me because I'm like, they're already kind of sketchy and wanting to deal with me, So it's just like, if I could start learning some of that common law stuff as well, I feel like, because here's the thing. I've seen this shit work firsthand, like been in the shit where it's like, well,
even crossing the border with you too, right? Crossing the border.
Yeah. Well, when I say that your border doesn't exist to me, the Day Treaty says that I can just, what are we talking about? So, and I don't know. It's that thing where they don't know what to do with you. There's really and because I don't know that they're I think he's right. There is nothing. It's just like there's no book. There's nothing. There's nothing to refer to other than, yeah, you're right, man. We don't have any jurisdiction over you. We might not have any jurisdiction at all. Don't tell anyone. Big thanks to Popois for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks if you choose to support the show. We are fully listener supported. Head over to Grimericans.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. Would be fantastic. Help support us over there. Grimericans.ca/support. And you could also head out our other podcasts. We have 2 other podcasts now. We have the Grimerica Outlawed podcast where we do the controversial stuff, vaccine stuff, and a lot of Canadian content over there as well. A lot of anti-government, the stuff that'll get us sent off to the camps eventually on GrimericaOutlawed.ca and AdultBrain.ca for the audiobooks. There's 130 of them available there. Check them out. I just changed them up, so there's new ones out for free now. We'll get into it's better to do that in the intro because no one really listens to the outro. Most people have already tuned out. So, but there's new audiobooks there. I don't know if this will come out in time. We have the Ronald Carlson trip starting on May 13th. Is there anything else? Any other house? Oh, yeah. Well, I mentioned in the show, you can go to a CanadianShame.ca for my book or a CanadianShame.substack.com for my newsletter. So, yeah, the newsletter. I mean, the latest newsletter was about how when Canada defaults on its debt all over the world, how's it going to pay for its Indigenous commitment? So, I mean, the money's going to run out. It's all sort of coming to head at that. The timing is perfect, really. What a time to be alive. So support the show. Have a great time. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week.